Should you do a detox protocol or a cleanse protocol, or should you work on your nervous system first? Let's talk about that today with my dear friend, Irene Lyon. Welcome back to the Sarah Kleiner Wellness YouTube channel, as well as the Evolving Wellness podcast. I am posting this on both platforms, a little bonus episode. And this is a conversation I just had with Irene over on Instagram and wanted to share with my community here on YouTube and as well as on the podcast. So if you're watching or listening, thank you so much for being here. Make sure to hit the like button on YouTube. And if you're a podcast listener, leave us up to a 5-star review over on Apple or Spotify. It will help to get the show out to more people. But again, Irene and I wanted to cover this topic of detox and cleanse, which I've talked about with a lot of different practitioners over the last few months because these things are becoming more and more popular. But I wanted to get her take on this from the nervous system standpoint. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. There's going to be a link down in the show notes. And if you're on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment for some resources of Irene's, her free YouTube channel, as well as some of her programs if you're interested in learning more about this nervous system healing work. So I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll talk with you again very soon. Let's hope it starts.
There it is.
Hi.
Yay, there you are.
That was.
Hello, how are you?
That was really strange. I wasn't following you on Instagram. But I know I am, so that's really odd. Anyway.
You know, I've had a lot of people tell me that. They're like, I follow you on Instagram, and then all of a sudden I realized I wasn't.
Anyway.
I don't know. That's fine. Now I'm glad you're following me, Irene.
Me too. Hi.
Hi. Sorry that as soon as I started, they started using the chainsaw. I can't make this stuff up. Like, I literally can't make it up. Totally quiet, and then there's a chainsaw.
Man.
So
it's okay.
A great, perfect opportunity to talk about the nervous system, right?
Up here in Canada, we're used to chainsaws, so it's all good.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I had texted you before we started this, and anyone who's watching, I put a little special link in my bio that says Irene Lyon links up at the top of my bio. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, I in the pinned comment and in the show notes, same thing, Irene Lyon links, and that's going to take you to Irene's free YouTube channel, tons of amazing resources, your Smart Body, Smart Mind program, your trauma program, as well as your nervous system, the 21-day tune-up. So that link will take you to all of those. If you hear anything that I talk about today and you want to learn more. But what I had texted you about was actually a question I had gotten via DM of somebody that wanted to know whether I thought it would be a better idea for them to invest in working on their nervous system or invest in a detox protocol.
That's a good question.
I had an answer, which I can reveal later, but I want to hear what you have to say about that sort of a question.
Both things are important. I'm going to make that really clear. If you're brand new to my world and how I teach, and this concept of healing the nervous system and restoring, I'm just going to say all the fancy words, get them off out. Healing the nervous system, restoring regulation to a dysregulated nervous system, understanding, what true window of tolerance is, understanding when the sympathetic nervous system and the freeze portion of the parasympathetic nervous system, when those are on high, which, let's be totally honest, Sarah, unless we're actively working on this work consciously, deliberately, I haven't met anybody who hasn't been brought up or has been living in some form of fight, flight, freeze, functional freeze. So it's just no blame, no shame. I was there. I know you were there. We're always doing these things. We're in a world that is just not normal for natural human living. So we need to understand that when our fight, flight, and freeze is on, even a tiny bit, the organ systems, the circulation, the lymph, in terms of detox, the emunctories like
the glands, the lymph, the kidneys, the spleen, the things that pump out the waste, they're not working properly. Just like when you have deep dysregulation and let's say complex PTSD or chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or autoimmune, these are all things that are completely, we know, linked to dysregulation in the nervous system. If anything, it's the cause, the root cause of a lot of these troubles, which is from trauma. So when we have this dysregulation, our general physiology can't work well. And so if we think about the importance of detoxification, technically, and I'm going to clean up my words in a second, when we're regulated, we detox naturally. Now, this is true. However, humans, we don't sweat the way we used to because we're not active, and I'm being very general, the way we used to. We're not outside in the sunshine, and I'm not an expert on deuterium and all those things, but I know you need some of that sunshine to get rid of some bad things. We're not grounding, so we're not getting the healthy electrons. We're not getting the sunlight that's natural, so our hormones aren't cascading in the way. So I'm bringing in some of the lingo that you use. And when we are dysregulated, our choices for what we eat aren't as good. We're not listening to our biology. Right. We might be going more down the food dogma train, which I know you know a lot about. And we're kind of we're detoxing, quote unquote, from that right now as a culture, Western culture. And so when we have this dysregulation, we haven't worked specifically on the traumas. Yes, you could go and do some detox protocols, some gut cleanses, liver cleanses. I know people who teach this stuff. I've done these things. They are important. But if that base level foundation can't do the upkeep, let's say you have a severe reaction, which happens. Like I did some deep detoxing about 2 years ago, and it was a game changer, but I had some extra skin flares. And if anybody knows my story, I had severe skin problems 10, 12, 20 years ago. If I didn't have the ability to be with the pain and the discomfort and the loss of really, to be honest, life and living, I know I may have, like, this is serious, Sarah. I may have ended my life. It was that painful back 10 years ago, the skin problems. 2 years ago, when I did start doing some detoxing and I got some extra rashes coming out because I had more regulation on board, I knew what to do with the discomfort. I knew how to ground myself internally. I knew how to resource myself internally. I knew how to ask for help. I knew how to slow down, all these things. So detoxing is important, 100%. And I sometimes wonder how much of that would occur naturally when we have base level regulation, which brings us into the sunshine more, into being more movement based, into healthier choices, into sleeping better, because we know that we detox when we sleep. Some people can't sleep. They have what we would classify as insomnia, but it's because their fight and flight is so high charged that they can't even fall asleep at night. So let's pick someone who's, let's say, doing some form of detox. Great. But what if you're up all night because you can't sleep because you're jacked up on survival stress? So,
because that's when autophagy and apoptosis happen, is when we sleep, which is why I harp on melatonin and darkness and getting sunlight on your skin during the day to start that process. But if you're, and I'm finding this is so true with a lot of people in my community. So many people have this completely dysregulated nervous system, and they're the one person in their home who has mold toxicity. The other people in their home don't have it. They live in the same home, they're in the same environment, but they have the very dysregulated nervous system, maybe because they're the mother and they have to take care of everyone, and they're stressing out, they're worrying, and it's just like, so their body becomes more vulnerable because of that nervous system dysregulation. And somebody lovely soul commented, Sarah looks good, but she looks tired here earlier in the chat.
Sorry.
I am effing tired. I have a baby, and I have a 15-year-old daughter with severe, significant special needs who has had a lot of medical emergencies over the last month that I have not shared about publicly. I will do that when I feel comfortable, but it's been a month from hell. And I just want to say personally that I'm grateful for doing your work, Irene, and the courses that you've taught me. Since 2021 is when I got into this. January of 2021 is when I got into this nervous system work, which aligns beautifully with circadian and quantum work. I mean, like, just beautiful.
Match made in heaven.
It's they are such a good team. But having gone through maybe one of the most stressful months of my life, yes, I'm tired and I feel like I've, aged a little bit.
And you'll get that back. And you'll get it back.
But I will get it back. And I have been able to be in my body and present through all of these things, through the hospital visits. And, I still do the exercises and things I learned in Smart Body, Smart Mind. I still integrate those things. And I know for certain if I hadn't had those tools on board, as well as the circadian tools, I mean, that's one thing I've been very consistent with, even through everything. I know from past experience of having, autoimmune issues, eczema, IBS, these things for me would pop up chronically in my 30s all the time. Life would get stressful, things would get hard, and boom, I've got IBS. I can't digest my food, my skin, I've got rashes all over my skin. I've got this stuff. So just from personal experience, I want to just say, I think that working on the nervous system and working on getting kind of these quantum circadian strategies on board, those two things work really well. But I would do those things before I did a detox or I did a cleanse any day of the week, because the amount of people that have come to me that have done these cleanses and detoxes, and they get more sick and more dysregulated because they don't have that regulation on board, or they do detox and cleanse and maybe they feel better, but guess what happens in 6 weeks or 2 months? It's back. It's back because your system is not robust enough to, to deal with these toxins or, what we've lived with parasites and mold and all these things since the beginning of time, right? But your system is just not robust enough to handle them. And so, I just want to add that.
It's a good add.
With this.
I'm going to use an analogy just to give some perspective, because sometimes that's helpful. And then we could talk about specifics. And if there's questions, I'm happy to take them. Sure. I always liken dysregulation of the nervous system where there's trapped trauma. And again, I cannot stress this enough because we still get a lot of these questions, and it makes sense because this is so new to people. Dysregulation of the nervous system is there because of adverse events, stressful events that we can't face, work with, and integrate in the moment. This could have been what happened to us in utero, as a baby, as a child, as a teenager, and we even know transgenerationally. So if someone is like, oh, but all this stuff happened so long ago, I've dealt with the emotions, it's in the physiology. And it's so important to know that. And when our physiology is off, all those things you just listed, Sarah, IBS, blah, 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 all those things, we know that this is what occurs when we have dysregulation. So let's liken dysregulation and unsafety, because this is the other thing. What if someone is like, I don't have any of those problems. I just have chronic low-level anxiety all the time, or I'm always sort of introverted and depressed and I have no energy, right? That malaise, that's collapse, that's shut down and freezes cousin, right? That's what happens when we can't fight, we can't flee, we go into collapse. So I liken this dysregulation to a house on fire. The house is on fire, right? Granted, you want to keep living in it, you want to save it. best to try to put it out with the fire people, right? The firemen, right?
Right.
Get the trucks in, get the fire hydrants pumped to the pressure, and just get that water on that sucker as fast as you can. If your house is burning down, you're not going to be worried about dusting. You're not going to be worried about making sure the laundry goes in the dryer, cooking your
Right.
meal. Hopefully I'm proving my point. You're going to be worried about the danger, the fire, destruction. The other thing you're not going to do is go into the basement or the attic and start cleaning old boxes that your mother gave you that you got to go through, right? True story for many of us. How many of us have boxes somewhere that our parents give us because they don't want to deal with it, right? So we're not going to detox our home of these junk materials. We're going to still, even though we might not want them, we're going to still focus on putting out the fire. So that's metaphor for, because people often ask, what should I do first? Should I do the cleanse? Should I do the detox? Should I do the meditation? Should I do the Reiki practice? I know many people through SPSM who are meditation teachers, Reiki master practitioners. Janet, our mutual friend, right, is people who are fitness trainers, all these things. And they have said, hands down, we need to put the fire out, which is code for we have to get out of the dysregulation. Because if I mix this metaphor with real life, and I know this from talking to students, when they do take the dysregulation out of their system and they start healing their traumas, in real life, they actually start taking care of their house better. They stop procrastinating on the things that they need to do because they see their environment. They're oriented to the crap, the junk, the dirt, and they oddly start cleaning and taking care. So if we think about the internal physiology, when our system isn't in dysregulation, that autonomic nervous system which governs the detox pathways, the hormonal releases, the digestive excretions, it also works more effortlessly because it's built that way, right? And then yes, we are bombarded with bad stuff all the time, chemicals, toxins. This was my main trauma, was chemical trauma. For those that don't know my story, like this is a very deep topic to my heart because I was exposed in utero as a child, as a teenager, to harsh chemicals from an animal veterinary clinic. My mother was exposed to DDT every week when she was at university in Manila. They sprayed their dorms with DDT and they made them close the windows. Like it went over the loudspeaker and they're like, okay, everyone, close your windows. We're about to spray. And this was, because of malaria and all these things. And so I was exposed for such a long time. So trust me when I say I understand the importance of getting chemicals out of the system. But I am certain, Sarah, that if I had worked on my nervous system regulation in my 20s, my senses, when this stuff started to come out, it wouldn't have been as severe. Because I was actually in functional freeze when I was going through these expulsions of chemicals from my skin. And I can't go back in time, but I bet with my life to a degree, if I had gotten out of functional freeze and had gotten into the general elements of just being a bit more whole with my system, the detox pathways would have been way more open. So, yeah.
I agree. I mean, I'm somebody that taught yoga for 13 years before I did your programs, thinking like, I've got this meditation piece, the yoga piece, the body piece. I hate to say this, but yoga teachers, in my experience, have some of the most dysregulated nervous systems of anyone, because it's an outward, looking at your students and, trying to present this like image. And I don't teach anymore. I've kind of stepped away from that community since 2020 for other reasons, because the community has changed a lot since 2020, unfortunately. But I feel like, I thought like, oh, I'm so regulated because I'm a yoga teacher. I know how to do all these techniques. And what I was doing a lot of the time with those specific techniques is kind of like spiritual bypass,
you betcha.
you know, and just kind of checking out completely, which,
well, and
yeah, was
it's not helpful. And it doesn't mean that a good, structured, mindful, bodyful yoga or any mind body class isn't a great practice. When you can do that with regulation, imagine if you did have the time, I know you don't right now, to teach yoga to a group of people who aren't bypassing, who are really listening to their bodies. It would be a bloody amazing experience. And what I'm also seeing, things like there's almost this marrying of a lot of these fad practices right now, whether it is plant medicines. Again, these things have a time and a place, but meditation has kind of shifted. It was really big a little while ago. It still is, but I agree. When I meet a lot of people who are lifelong meditators, who have done probably, in my opinion, too much plant medicine, too much psilocybin, not using, for instance, cannabis or tobacco as a sacred practice. It's an addiction. It's a management strategy, right? There's sacred elements to all these medicines. They come from the earth, right? So they're there for a reason, but they're being abused and overused. And if a person can't feel every single cell in their body when they go into these practices, they're not going to be working with those medicines in the way that they should, because they're meant to be used in a natural biological sense, not with all the freeze and shutdown and anxiety that we have, which is kind of ironic because people are using them to treat depression and anxiety. But I have met many who have been down that path, and you can tell, Sarah, that they're fractured. They're not really living from their internal core. And I won't get into more of that, but it to me, I'm seeing a lot of these practices that aren't serving people. They think they might because they have this insane experience, but as you've experienced the smart body, smart mind work, it's pretty boring. It's very subtle. It's like, I mean, you're a new mama, like what you do with your kiddo, your little one, is very boring, quote unquote. But that's what we need when we're learning regulation. We need consistency, care, connection, food, movement, sleep, cleaning, and it repeats, engagement. And I think we've been sold this lie that we need these fancy, fancy protocols to heal. But we didn't have any of this back in the day. And yet humanity seemed to survive without all these fancy protocols back in the day, but we were also regulated. Yes, threats, yes, saber-toothed tiger coming to get us, but we also were aware of the saber-toothed tigers, right? We didn't mess with them. We let them do their thing, and we did our thing as humans.
Yeah, I mean, so much to unpack from that, but I feel like for me, just to say, the yoga stuff helped me tremendously. Probably saved my life a few times. So I don't want to totally write it off and act as though it wasn't helpful. What I found out was that there was a bit of shutdown underneath a lot of those practices that was happening, where I wasn't acknowledging trauma. I wasn't dealing with my nervous system truly, you know, which I know you've done. That's kind of what got me addicted to your channel. I think it was in 2020, actually. I said 2021, but it was 2020. Okay. I started binge watching all your videos because I was like, you know, she's on to something here with the spiritual bypass and, you know, meditation and yoga. I really felt like you were. But yeah, just to go back to the original topic, I think what a lot of people are missing in the holistic space and in the wellness space is the fact that our body, they're not giving the human body enough credit. They're not giving our body credit enough to be robust, right? We are not giving our bodies the right signals, right? We're not getting sunlight. We're not going outdoors. We're not eating properly. We're not doing all of that stuff. No, we're not. But if your nervous system is dysregulated, you can't even begin to fathom like how to do that, you know? I felt like the one of the videos that you said about plants,
Yes.
keeping plants alive. I have so many beautiful plants
Yeah.
now in my home that I bought a bunch of plants when I moved into this house a year ago, and they're all still alive, and I've added more, and it's a miracle because I could never keep plants alive, right?
I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought that up, because someone might be going, what the heck does that have to do with healing my trauma and detoxing my body? But if you really take a moment to step back, it's an attunement. It's just like when you're dysregulated, you cannot raise a human very well because you're not attuned to their signals. Because you're not attuning to your signals. And so when you have plants, if you have a garden, you don't know, like I have had so many photos sent to me via your peers from SPSM with their thriving plants and gardens, and they're like, I never was able to do this. And it's not like they got a book or they took a course. It's in us to take care of natural living things, and we've just gotten so far away from that. And it does come back to the detox thing, because again, like I said, our bodies are meant to do that naturally. And then, yes, when you get as much of the natural detoxing going, and you know that you were exposed to chemicals like me, then yes, add in something to help with that and seek out what you might need for that. But the fact that that happens across all of your peers, to me, shows that the curriculum is actually getting to the root of dysregulation. And sometimes people ask, Sarah, because you were mentioning yoga, right? They'll say, but isn't yoga a somatic practice? And I'm like, okay, yeah, it uses your body. And even the term somatic is getting confusing.
Oh, it's getting way
Yeah,
out of hand.
My expertise, again, I didn't just pull this course well, maybe I did pull it out of the ether, but I'm trained, right? And so I know how to work with one person to work with deep, deep, deep traumas. That's my expertise. And so the course is teaching a person how to become their own medicine by listening to their organs. We work with the organs, as you know. We work with the kidneys, the adrenals, the gut, the diaphragms, the breath, the brainstem, the fascia, the heart tissue. Like, we aren't just sitting there and feeling our emotions and expressing. We're actually doing tactical, practical exercises that mimic in a way what we should have gotten when we were infants from a securely attached, regulated mom or dad. And that can be really hard to understand when we didn't get it, but that's exactly what's happening in this course. And that's why it isn't just for anxiety, or it's not just for IBS. We see shifts in all spectrums of dysregulation. Even like phobias. I remember one of your peers, Sarah, I'll never forget it. I never captured it. This person was deathly afraid of spiders, like would, kill them and all that. And I get it. Sometimes that might happen. But now she's like, I can't believe it. I don't go into a stress response. I see it as a natural living creature, which it is, and I help it get outside. And to me, that's exactly how we should be with natural living creatures. We shouldn't fear them. We should know, okay, maybe there's some danger, but I'm not going to go into a stress response. And if you caught that alligator video meme I did the other day with the golfer, what's so crazy about that is it's a metaphor for our emotions and being with the big, scary, intense things. But there's a literal connotation in there. Because if we're regulated, we will be oriented and we'll see that reptile. We won't get startled by it as that golfer did. And that's the interesting thing about that one. It's like, actually, it is literal. We would see these threats and we wouldn't freak out and we would walk the other way. Or as the second golfer did, he's like, come on, buddy, let's get back into the water. You're not safe here on the green, right? Anyway, let me know if there's any questions you want me to tackle.
Yeah. One question that came in my DMs, and I do have to head pretty soon, but if you're watching and you're interested in any of this, there's a link in my bio that says Irene Lyon at the very top. You can click that and get information on everything we talk about. And if you're on YouTube, it's in the pinned comment and in the show notes. But one of the things that someone asked me about was, is this work religious? Is she going to have me, or not religious? Is it spiritual, esoteric? Am I going to have to do some woo-woo spiritual stuff that's going to go against my, you know, what I believe fundamentally for me? I said no, but I would like to hear it from you also.
So, I mean, I'm happy to say I don't have a practicing faith. I was raised Catholic. I didn't, you know, but I understand the attraction and draw to practice certain faiths and religions. Fully get that. What I have seen, and I've seen this over and over again, and I found this in myself, Sarah, as we become more deeply regulated, not bypassed, like really regulated in ourselves, people will say over and over again these two things. I'm feeling more human, whatever that means. I'm feeling a greater connection to source, whatever that means. For some people, their source becomes nature. For others, it becomes their art. For others, it becomes their community. For others, it might be they go back to the childhood religion that traumatized them and they find beauty in it, right? At the core, from what I know, all religions have the same premise. You know, be good to each other, don't harm each other, love thy neighbor as thyself, don't cheat, don't lie, don't kill, you know, take care of the planet. It's very simple when we really get to the baseline of that. And when we become regulated, just like I said about the alligator reptile, you don't want to kill the thing. You want to help it get safe, right? How many people harm their children? So many, even though they love them. Why do they harm their children? They're living in survival stress, right? They're living in survival stress. They don't know how to stop harming their children. And so to go back to the question about religion, no, it is not. It is human. But what will happen is this expression of, I believe, what we truly are meant to be. And each person is different because we're humans. Our brains are so complex, which is why we have diversity in creativity, how we speak, all the languages we can speak. You know, we're not monosyllabus, you know, we're very diverse. The other thing I'll say is when we get more connected to self and we get more regulated, we become more accepting of people that aren't like us, right? Way more.
Yeah, that's
way more
one. Huge.
Way more empathetic. We might not like that, but we accept it. And that's what we're missing hugely, I think, in this world. The final thing I'll say about that, some people get a little squeamish about sound because we've gotten this asked, like, I can't do yoga because of the Om. And okay, humans are meant to express sound. We're meant to emit sounds that aren't just normal sounds. And when you start to get into your biology and you're grieving something or you're in pain, physical, it isn't just, ouch, that hurts. Sounds will come out that could mimic what you might consider chanting to be, but it's not chanting. If you've ever been with, obviously, a newborn baby or an animal that is suffering, the sounds, or a cat that's in a bath and they don't want to be in a bath, the sounds that come out of them are like next level. And so humans, we have sound that needs to come out of us when we're processing, but it is not religious. It's not connected to any kind of religious tradition. It is completely human. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah,
cool.
I think that's great. And it's part of our nature, right? But there's not anything in the course that is like, now we align all of our chakras and
I mean, I might mention if someone asks a question about chakras, I'll answer it.
Right.
but we're not teaching you those. We are teaching you levels that line up with the chakras when we think about the hypothalamus, right? The
Yes.
thyroid, the thymus.
Physiology. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
And
physiology.
it's complete physiology. And
yeah.
I respect the Eastern traditions. Why wouldn't I?
Mhm.
Right. I'll go to an
Right.
acupuncturist. I'll get some reflexology. Why not? It feels amazing, right?
Right.
So
Definitely.
I am open to all healing methods. And the thing is, what does a person need in the moment? And most people, Sarah, haven't started with this base level regulation of the nervous system. And that's obviously what SBSM is all about, as you know. Yes.
Yes. And so just so anyone knows, if you're watching, tomorrow the cart closes for Smart Body, Smart Mind. Your other two programs, those are available year round. But if you did want to do Smart Body, Smart Mind, you're not going to run that
next
again
year.
until
Next March.
next year.
Yeah.
March.
Yeah.
March.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Now's the time. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Irene. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And check out the link in my bio for Irene stuff. And I'll put this
Thanks,
on
my
YouTube
dear.
later today.
Bye, everyone. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.